as you can see here. Definitely the Paul McCartney from 1966 to 1967, just a year apart, of course. There's a dramatic difference. So the topic of this video is what happened to the real Paul McCartney. And I believe this is the real Paul McCartney, John Halliday, as you see here, the so-called caretaker of the childhood home of Paul McCartney himself. And definitely they love to put the truth in plain sight, just like I've shown before with David Bowie, as you see here, compared to Jack Stephen in the studio of Sky News. And definitely the teeth are an exact match. The voices are identical. If you see my videos on it, I'll play it again in the future. But the point is, they love to play these games. And here is another example of Jack Stephen, the real Jack Stephen, and the supposed Jack Stephen talking about David Bowie in the Sky News studio. And definitely this is exactly the same situation I'm going to get into here when it comes to Paul McCartney and his teeth. And definitely this is going to be the exact same scenario, the same tricks that are going to be exposed, just like David Bowie, the same situation when it comes to, as I just shown earlier here with Paul McCartney. Let's get right to it. And here is the real Paul McCartney, alive and well, in front of this brick house, as I mentioned earlier, the former caretaker of the childhood home of Paul McCartney. How fitting, Paul McCartney in front of his childhood home. Let's take a look and take a listen.
If he comes, he'll say, have you got a telly? I'll say yes. He'll say, have you got a license? I'll say no. I'll say, there's the telly, right? You know that 50s one. It's a valve on, it doesn't work. There's no lead on the back. So that'll be
That's some fun with that.
I know.
And let's take another look at that as he hams up for the camera. Play this slowly here. And this is a performer. And this is his mocking face he makes to the camera. Do you notice me? Do you recognize me? And here is John Halliday once again from a few years back from this video itself. Take a look here. And this is very revealing. Take a listen.
Very strange. I think living in the house has changed his features, and he's starting to look like Paul now.
You just heard that a pedestrian on the street says how living in Paul's house has changed his features and how he looks like Paul McCartney now. Let's continue on.
He's starting to look like Paul now.
I'm glad I'm not looking after Notre Dame Cathedral.
That's a lot of cleaning.
There's mine as well. I'm off duty now. We've just done 6 days. We do the bank holiday one.
And again, another look at Paul McCartney, the real Paul McCartney in plain sight, mugging for the camera for all to see. Now, the timeline of the change. Here is the Beatles' last concert from San Francisco, California at Candlestick Park, August 1966. As you can see, they're all clean shaven for their last official concert. Now let's take a look here. The last time the Beatles performed together from London, England, January 1969, the rooftop concert. Take a look closely as we see here. You see Paul McCartney with the full beard. Everybody else here in the band, Ringo Starr, John Lennon, and George Harrison, they have, obviously, you see sideburns, and George Harrison has a mustache, but the only individual in the band with the full beard is Paul McCartney. And the old way to disguise yourself is grow yourself a beard, and obviously you can't see all the features of the face when you have the beard. Perfectly done to disguise William Campbell, as you see here, also known as Billy Shears. And let's take a look here. The exact opposite, the duality aspect, with Paul McCartney clean shaven and the rest of the Beatles with beards. The duality aspect. And let's take a look here, a closer look at so-called Paul McCartney, Billy Shears. And definitely this is not the same Paul McCartney prior to 1966, as I shown earlier. Paul McCartney from 1966 and Paul McCartney 1967. You don't make this drastic change in facial structure in just 1 year. Now, just like I mentioned earlier in the video, with so-called Jack Stephen in the studio obviously the same teeth as David Bowie, but the real Jack Stephen, the teeth are different. It's the same scenario when it comes to Paul McCartney and the teeth. Here's a photo of Paul McCartney from 1965. Let's get a little bit of a close-up, and you can definitely see the left side, his right side of his teeth, they're pushed in a bit. Again, on what we see from our vantage point, the left side, his right side. And take a look here at Paul McCartney's replacement, Billy Shears, during the rooftop concert. You can definitely see those teeth are nice and rounded in the front. And I should add, these teeth are much longer. Just take a look here once again, the comparison. No doubt whatsoever. These teeth, again, are more round in the front. Let's take a look here at side by side. And you can definitely see the teeth are not the same. 100% two different people. Make no mistake about it.